Hey there, welcome to Outside the Chapel, formerly known as Catholic Influencers Podcast Extended Interviews. I'm Augie Angrisano, and today's episode is packed with more devotion to Mary than my grandma's rosary collection. Our guest is Moses Sanchez, a family man, military man, and someone who came to the faith later on in life. We're diving deep into Marian devotion and the best practices for Advent, so get ready. Today's gospel is Luke 21, 25 to 28, 34 to 36. And for more, make sure to catch that full episode with Alyssa, Justine, and Father Rob. Let's welcome Moses and get this thing started.
Thanks for having me, Augie. I'm excited to be here.
So who is Moses Sanchez?
Wow. Who is Moses? Moses Sanchez is a child of God. He's a husband. He's a father of 3 adult children, grandfather of 3 babies.
Wow.
Godfather of 7 babies and counting. My wife says if I can get to 10, I get a special ring. Moses was cradle Catholic, I guess you could say. I was a cradle Catholic, born culturally into the Catholic faith. I would say I fell away from my faith once I went active duty in the Navy at an early age. Retired after 26 years of service, and during that time frame, I didn't go to Mass very much. Actually, the only time I ever went to Mass during that time was when I was home visiting my family, and we all got to go to church, you know. But I came back thanks to my wife and a trip to Afghanistan in 2011. That definitely, I always, jokingly say that I found Jesus in Afghanistan.
Wow. And you were still serving in the military at that time?
Yeah, I was deployed in 2011, and I remember being there. And at the base, they had a weekly Mass and confession.
Yeah, wow.
And I really had a come to Jesus moment there my first few weeks, and it was one of those things where I'm going to go to Mass, and I went to confession, and I never missed a Mass or a confession the entire time I was there. This is weekly confession. It changed everything. It was a game changer. Yeah, Came back home. My wife and I weren't married in the church. We had started the process for the convalidation when I got back. It took a really long time, but we were finally convalidated in 2019. And after that convalidation, I decided to look a little more into my faith and took an apologetics program. It was a 2-year apologetics program that I graduated from. And halfway through that apologetics program, I decided that I was going to take the next few steps and start discerning the diaconate. So I'm currently in my studies for the prerequisites for the diaconate program here at the Diocese of Phoenix. And that's who Moses is.
Man, that is a crazy response. So much to unpack there. But I'm just kind of stuck on the fact that you have that many kids and that many godchildren. You look like you're 20. How old are you, if you don't mind?
I'm 47 years old.
Yeah.
And
you're doing well, man. You're keeping well.
Appreciate that. No, it feels good. I'm blessed. I'm definitely in the genes. When I go out with my dad, everyone thinks we're brothers.
So who was Jesus to you when you were growing up? You said you were cradle Catholic, but how would you define your relationship with him in your teenage years?
The seed was planted, and it was planted on good soil. My parents, they almost got divorced early on, and they went to what it was called a marriage encounter group, which is it's a marriage group within the Catholic Church. Okay. And that kept them together. That changed the way they disciplined us. That changed the way they communicated with us. That was one of my first impressions of the church. Was we would go every weekend, but my first something's changing here started when they were really getting involved in their local ministry. And so, we prayed the rosary every Sunday. I just wrote a book on the rosary, and I had to mention that without thinking about it, hindsight, we prayed the rosary every Sunday night as a family.
Mm.
I mean, I fell away. Who was Jesus to me during high school? He was God, but he was my buddy. Jesus was my friend. This is kind of how a lot of people in, I'm going to say a mixed faith, Protestant faith communities really look at Jesus as, he's my best friend. And I get that. that's kind of how I looked at Jesus. I didn't look at him with the same, I'm going to say, reverence that I do now, right? It was more like he was my best friend. I don't need to go see him at mass because he's always with me. I don't need to go to church because he's everywhere. And it was very naive, and I think it's very common among a lot of cradle Catholics that, they don't really get into learning their faith. And quite honestly, it's self accountability. As a parent, my kids are all adults, but I remember reading the Catechism of the Catholic Church in one of my study classes. And you know what the church says about who's in charge of the kids' faith and formation and education? It's the parents. It's not the priest's job. It's not his your kid's education in the faith is not the priest's job. It's the parents' job. That's what the catechism says. And like a lot of cradle Catholics, my parents didn't, they did what they could. They put me in a private school for a year. They put me in RE and said, okay, those guys will take care of it. That wasn't good enough. And today, it's not good enough for our families. We really do, us men have to do a better job of taking responsibility and ownership for that.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in the same boat. Whereas, my parents did the best they could. A lot of it was just, dropping me off at the youth group and not really seeing the tangible, hands-on, day in, day out prayer life. And that's just something that kind of concerns me with my kids. Is how do I have a more hands-on approach to passing down the faith and showing them how to be present and showing them, how prayer can actually work for them and their joys and in their fears on a day-to-day basis.
Well, you got a lot of great tools. I see a lot of tools all around us. I think the internet's been amazing, the social media stuff. I mean, I see some things I didn't know that I never blessed my kids. I never knew that I was the priest of my domestic church. I never knew that I had these abilities. Nobody told me these things. I learned these things in the last 3 years of school. It's way beyond my kid. My youngest just got married, right? I mean, I'm so far beyond that. And I don't regret, okay? We can't live in the past. The past is meant for lessons, not regret, not emotions. That's where the devil plays. The devil loves to play with the whole regret. No. We can only move forward, but it's important to share that information with other young dads and other young men that, hey, remember, you have certain powers and abilities that you may not be aware of. Study your faith, study the catechism, study our church. It's amazing. It's an incredible church.
100%. You said you wrote a book. Let's circle back to that. Can you kind of share a little bit of, what's the backstory of it coming about? And give us the details.
So the rosary was I thank my mother for this, and I would say this to all the women out there who are listening to this. My mother planted that seed deep in my head that when she's not there, Mary was always there. And I was doing the audio book for my book and The Ultimate Rosary. And in the introduction, I remember recording and just thinking about that, about how I didn't go to church when I was active duty Navy, when I was by myself out there partying like a rock star, doing everything a young sailor would. But the first time I got in trouble, the first time I got in serious trouble in the Navy, and mom wasn't there for me, where did I go? I prayed the rosary. That's how deep that was. Like, I'm not going to church. I'm scared. I'm out here out to sea. I got 10 fingers. I didn't have a rosary with me. This is why God gave us 10 fingers. And I did. So devotion to Mary was there. I just didn't know how powerful, how important it was until the last 3-4 years. And my wife and I have consecrated ourselves to Mary. We went through the process. And the book, The Ultimate Rosary, has been, it came about because after I got my certificate in apologetics, a lot of my friends started asking questions. Every time they see me, hey, I got a question for you. What about this? What about this? What about this? And this past April, a very prominent businessman who I admire, I helped lead a rosary at a funeral. I didn't know he was there. After the funeral, weeks after, I run into him at a conference in Vegas, and he says to me, hey, I got a question about the rosary. I said, yes, sir. He says, Why are the sorrowful mysteries on Tuesdays? I get Fridays. Fridays is a very typical day of penance. Why are they on Tuesday?
Yeah.
And I said, I have no idea. I'm going to look that up. And I literally went from that casino floor up to my room. Just, I worked on
Nice.
this for about 4 hours. I got the answer. And I came back down to him and I told him the answer. And while telling him this, I realized doing all this research, trying to find that answer, I started getting answers to questions I didn't know I had. And there were so many questions and so many answers. And I just decided that we don't have a comprehensive resource out there that you can just search and boom, it's there regarding some of these FAQs on the rosary. Why not create one? So that's what I did. I created my own little, the ultimate. This is just a proof. So I'm excited because it's coming out October 7th, which is Our Lady of the Rosary Day.
Man, how long has it been in the works? And what was that research process like? How long did it take you?
Normally, I blog when I'm in class. So I have classes on Wednesday nights. I've been in school. This is my 4th year. And I blog a lot of the things I learn in class. And I have friends who ask me questions, and I blog these things. Well, this funeral was in April, and I went right into the book. I said, you know what? I'm not blogging at all this summer. I do a lot of research week by week anyways. So I did have to read some books that I never thought I would read by St. Louis de Montfort and St. John Paul the Great, right? And some of their books to get some other insights. And it's been so powerful that I already have 2 other books in the works. One is called Ultimate Saints. And it's the universal call to holiness. What does it mean to be a saint? What exactly is a saint? What's the process? And maybe some saints that people never heard of, right? And the other book is called Ultimate Suffering, and Ultimate Suffering is about suffering and how we are called to suffer. And I think the world we live in right now, especially as a grandparent and as a parent, we do in an effort to give better to our kids and our grandkids. Sometimes we do damage because we don't want them to suffer. Instead, we should teach them how to suffer. I'm not saying that you should force your kids in that, but you should teach them how to handle suffering because they're going to suffer. You cannot prevent that from your kids. They're going to have their hearts broken. Their best friend is going to break up with them. They're going to lose their blankie. I mean, how do you suffer? And I think our world has gotten on the complete polar opposite end of how to do that. And that's why Ultimate Suffering is being born. So all these are going to come out over the next 6 to 9 months. And I'm excited about it.
So could you share a little insight now for our audience of, how does one suffer well?
Well, we're lucky because we have a church, and the church has all sorts of resources on this thing we call redemptive suffering. And I didn't know what redemptive suffering was until about 3 years ago. And when I read that, I went, wait, you mean to tell me, I'm 47 years old, that for 44 years of my life, I suffered for nothing? I mean, that was like,
Yeah.
all that wasted suffering. I know I don't suffer anymore for nothing. Every suffering, every pain, every kink, every ouch, I'm exhausted. I only slept 2 hours last night. God, take this suffering. I offer it up to you for the souls in purgatory. I offer this suffering up to you for my neighbor down the street who just lost his wife. I offer this pain that I have here. And I was at a retreat for a Liturgy of the Hours retreat in Pennsylvania a couple of months ago. And a phenomenal retreat, but I remember being in the chapel with my wife, and I had excruciating lower back pain. And I'm in the chapel with her getting ready for Mass that morning, and I'm laughing. I'm kind of giggling under my breath, and like my wife would do. She's like, "What's so funny?"
Yeah.
And I said, this pain is killing me. And I would not be praying as hard as I'm praying right now if I wasn't in this much pain. I mean, that's the funny thing about it. Like when you learn about redemptive suffering and how to use it, it changes your perspective on everything. It just makes you a little softer, a little less hangry, a little less edgier. Suddenly you're just like, and I talk about suffering to all my nephews and my nieces and anybody, any young person. If you could just teach them just that. My goddaughter, she's always like, offer it up. Abuelito, offer it up.
Oh man. All right, let's dive into this gospel reflection. What popped out at you? What would you love to share with us?
Well, I at first, I was thinking, wow, this is not what I think most people would think of first week of Advent, right? Advent season to most people is Christmassy, right? It's Jesus, it's tree. We got the tree up. It's already after Thanksgiving, and we're putting the tree up. Some people are putting their lights up before Thanksgiving, which is insane. But you think of this happy time, and then you get to Luke, and at this part of the reading, he just got done speaking in parables, lots of parables, and he's rattling, but he also just angered the Pharisees. Just got that big confrontational moment in Luke where he was calling them out, right? And here comes this second coming kind of reading where really, but when you think about it, this whole signs and persecutions and the destruction and these signs that he talks about, this second coming, how appropriate is it that we get the second coming at the first coming, the week that we celebrate the first coming of Jesus, right? There are things that tie in with Advent, with the whole second coming, whether it's vigilance, be vigilant. In this reading, he talks about, you got to be detached from worldly things, right? Being prepared, right? That's what Advent is. We're preparing for the coming of Jesus. Well, he's saying, be prepared. I'm coming back, right? And the whole I'm coming back part is a hopefulness, right? We get this hope, which is very much a seasonal emotion during the Advent season, where we're supposed to be spiritually preparing ourselves for him. And so I thought this when you really get into the reading, it's like, this is very much appropriate for the first week of Advent.
I feel like the generic cradle Catholic population, which I put myself in, so I'm not throwing any shots, we know all about Lent. But Advent, I don't really know a whole lot about. And so, I guess I already asked you, how do you suffer well? Next question is, how do you Advent well? And what are some tips and some practices? And how should we go in and dive into this season of Advent?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. Here, I'll give you some great, here's a big nugget, okay? Things that change your life. Think about whenever you've made like major changes like weight loss or habits, right? Often Catholics take an opportunity once a year to make big habitual changes, right? We call that time Easter or Lent, right? Well, historically, Advent was a Lenten season.
Really?
Historically, wow. Advent was a 40-day period. And in the old, if you can Google this, you can search this, it's really cool. Advent was also a time of penance. So we used to do everything we do during Lent, we did during Advent season in the old days. We stopped doing that. I don't remember right now where I read the time frame where we stopped doing this. I want to say we stopped doing it in the 1960s. It might have been Vatican II. Recent. But prior to that, we were, it was a normal time frame for us to fast, to pray and alms give. Very similar to the Lenten season. So if you want to really level up your Advent season, this is a perfect time to do that, to fast, to set something, maybe a new habit, maybe a new prayer habit. Maybe you're going to do a rosary a day. Maybe you're like, oh, I've always wanted to try a rosary a day. Do a rosary a day during Advent season, right? And Advent ends on Christmas Day. So Christmas Day is that celebration, is that Easter Sunday. So that's the day you get to, party like a rock star. But you want to change some habits, and maybe I'm going to go to adoration chapel, right? Every day. Maybe I remember I used to just start with some real basic stuff like I'm going to learn the Our Father in Latin, right? So I'm just going to pray the Our Father every day in Latin, and just once a day. Or you could do it like the apostles did it in the Didache. In the Didache, they prayed the Our Father 3 times a day. So maybe that's the habit you want to do. But during this Advent season, I would say the best thing that your listeners can do is think of it as a Lenten time frame where you're going to pray, you're going to fast, and maybe even do some almsgiving here and there.
I didn't know any of that, and I'm baffled that like 1960s ish is where it changed. That's so recent. But that really came kind of to my attention when I was listening to a homily by Father Mike Schmitz, where he kind of said to go into the Lenten or to the Advent season, thinking, what if you knew you were going to die on Christmas Day? And he was like, prepare for your death. And what would you do? What would you change? What habits would you kick out of your life? And that just really blew my mind. I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was supposed to be like, a season of preparing in that type of way. So it was really, it was really eye-opening for me. And to hear this backstory, that's crazy. I don't think a lot of people, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, I don't know, but I just didn't know that.
And I love the idea of twice a year. So my wife and I, we decided that this Advent season, we're going to treat it exactly. This will be the first Advent. We're going to treat it just like Lent. And we try to go all out in Lent. We try to really push our own boundaries.
All right. So what is God sharing with you in your own personal prayer life? Do you mind sharing it with us a little bit? Just what's a little golden nugget that the Holy Spirit is just writing on your heart?
I had a rough confrontation with someone who's very near and dear to my heart recently. And I was on a lake, I was kayaking, and I was so upset. I was screaming at God, and I was yelling at him in the middle of this lake by myself and just begging, just like, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing here? I'm trying to do everything you asked me to, right? And I heard loud and clear, and my spiritual advisor, my spiritual mentor, he definitely agreed with this. The 3 things that I had to do: I had to be more kind, be more patient, and pray more. And I went, what does that mean? What does that even mean? And my spiritual advisor was like, you know what it means. And I find myself at this point right now praying more. And it's different types. I'm catching myself in different moments of the day, and even within conversations, I'm finding myself praying more. I'm finding myself checking myself on my wife always says, we would be better off in our families if we gave each other the same grace and the same mercy that we give strangers. Be more kind, be more patient, pray more.
Man, I'm gonna have to sit on that. Treating your loved ones like strangers. Where can we find this book, and when is it coming out? And just give us the details if we want to pray that.
It'll be already out, and you can find it on Amazon. The ebook is free. The paperback is, I think it's $9.99. But yeah, you can get downloaded for free on Amazon, because this is a passion. This is something I love. This is something that it's important to me, and I want to give it to as many people as they want it.
And what do you expect the person will get out of it by praying the rosary and going through the Ultimate Rosary ebook or book at the same time? How do you think it will change?
Oh man, their lives will be changed. There is no doubt that the rosary changes lives. The rosary causes miracles to happen all the time. There's just historical evidence behind that. But most importantly, I think, and I hope and I pray that folks who pick up the rosary or pick up this book will at least develop a relationship with Mary. I mean, I put a poll up on my Twitter account. I said, who's the most Who's the greatest disciple that ever followed Jesus? Was it Peter, James, John, or other? And the answer is other. The answer is Mary. And I cannot overstate that. Mary is the only one that never abandoned him. Mary was there from the very beginning at the foot of the cross. She was there when they pulled him down from the cross. She was there when they put him in the tomb. She'd been there. And what is the last thing Scripture says that Mary said to any of us? Do whatever he tells you. You can't have a more greater disciple than Mary. And in having that relationship with her, praying the rosary, a lot of people forget that the rosary is about the mysteries. It's about the story of salvation. Dr. David Anders on EWTN always says that the rosary was originally meant for people to learn the story of salvation who couldn't read or ever touch a Bible. Remember the mysteries. It's all about the mysteries.
I kind of find myself, even when I'm praying the rosary, even though I've been Catholic and around a devotion to Mary my entire life, I get a bit weirded out in like talking to Mary, and I automatically just shift to talking to Jesus like the entire time. Could you share a little insight on how to bring Mary into the dialogue of the rosary and just how to keep it Jesus oriented, but how do you make it a conversation with Mary as well? I feel like I haven't really found a good balance.
I would try to, I think something that we can probably all relate to is like you asking your father for something, right? And bringing mom along with you. and mom backs you up.
Yeah.
Now, she doesn't have to take the fight. She doesn't have to, but she's there and mom agrees with you. And I think that's an easy way to connect the two there. I also think that when I read St. Louis de Montfort had this really cool, interesting way to pray the rosary, where he didn't say exactly where in the decade he did this, but he did it multiple times. So I do it probably on the third or fourth Hail Mary and then the eighth. Or sometimes I'll just do it on the halfway mark. But what he used to say is, when you're doing the rosary, remember this part. Remember the very first half. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. When you stop at Jesus, say something about the mystery, and then continue. So Jesus, who the angel Gabriel came down and said to Mary, you're about to be the mother of God. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And then continue your regular rosary, and then 2 or 3 later, and Jesus, and then say, and Mary accepted. Mary said, thy will be done. Mary, now you're basically telling the mystery, the entire story. It really, I think it changes the way you look. And then the joyful mysteries are easy to do that with, because you really connect Mary to a lot of the joyful mysteries because she's in every one of them. But then it changes when you start talking about the sorrowful mysteries. It changes when you're really, meditating on even the glorious mysteries. Mary's no longer really at the forefront like she is in the joyful mysteries. The luminous mysteries, she's on the second one with the wedding in Cana. But if you just focus, I really dug that, because he didn't say stop doing the rosary and read scripture. No, he just said just bring it back to remember, because we all get this. We get distracted. We sometimes get in a trance and we forget. Wait, what was it? That's why we have beads. Otherwise, we're like, oh, which one was I on?
Yeah.
But that's how I would look at it, as Mama Mary is there with you, and you're there to petition Jesus for something, and you got the number one person that can petition like a pro with you. And so, but remember the mysteries. When I didn't know what I was doing before I wrote this book, sometimes I would incorporate my own petitions into the mysteries. I wouldn't even mention the mysteries. I'd say, well, since I don't know all the mysteries, I would say, for this decade, please just take care of my dad. And then the next decade, take care of my mom. And the next decade, take care of my sister. That's beautiful that you're praying for them, but that's also not what the rosary is. That's separate, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful thing. Right. But the right way to do a rosary, to really get a great benefit out of it, is to remember the mysteries. And the best part of that is you do it enough times and you can tell the story of salvation in 5 minutes to anybody. Not even 5 minutes. You could do it just by mentioning each mystery, and that would take less than a minute to mention every single mystery.
Moses, it's been so good having you on the podcast. I find you to be just an incredible wealth of knowledge, a great communicator. Hopefully we can have you back. Thank you for sharing this week with us.
Amen, Augie. Thank you for your prayers. I appreciate that. And thank you for all the folks who listen to you and support you and help you out. This has been a real pleasure.
That's it for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and maybe even share it with your Advent accountability partner. For a full breakdown of the gospel, tune in to the full episode of Outside the Chapel, available on all platforms. If you want to learn more about us and our podcast, head to iconministry.com. See you next week.